So I actually would want to start with a bit of a cliche. It suggests itself, which is the first line of Dickens's Tale of Two Cities, which is that it is the best of times and it is the worst of times. I think best of times are seen all over. High-rises, apartments selling at fancy prices, new airports, and the worst is also being seen because many of you would have waded through flood waters to arrive in Delhi, so we see the worst of it also. Now, my suggestion for structuring the session, which we've been discussing with our panelists here, is that let's make use of these 60 minutes in an energetic and lively fashion. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to ask each panelist to outline 3 specific areas where they think city development needs attention. All of us have we are all from various different backgrounds, and therefore we all have different perspectives on how cities should be handled. So it'll be interesting to find from people with diverse backgrounds who are deeply involved with city and urban development to at least get the top 3 points of what cities should be doing. So if we are all different, then you will get 3 into 5, 15 different ideas. And if some of these ideas intersect, then you will get less, but then we will know that some ideas are common. And if somebody has more than 3 ideas, which I know Shirish does, he has 5, so you get a bonus of 2 from him, right? So with that, I'm going to use, I think the introductions have been done by the lady, but since many of you were settling down, what I'll do is I'll just repeat that very, very quickly. I'm not going to do any series because people on here are well known by themselves. So on my left is Mr. Neil Raheja, Chairman of the CII National Council on Real Estate and the Group President of K. Raheja Corporation. On his left is Dr. Shirish Sankhe, Senior Partner Emeritus of McKinsey & Company and Director and Founding Partner of the ISEG Foundation and an acknowledged city expert. Immediately on my right is Mr. Rajkumar Saini. Rajat, sorry. I missed out the A and T, but that adds some extra 2 to you. So Rajat Kumar Saini, CEO and MD of the National Industrial Corridor Development Corporation and Chairman NICDC Logistics Data Services. And then I have Sumit Gera, CEO of India Business Park Capital Land Investment. So I'm actually going to use my prerogative as the chairperson of this session to set off with my 3 points. And then for the rest of the session, I can keep quiet and say thank you at the end. My first major point is a legislative piece. Is that way back in 1992, Parliament passed legislation called the 74th Amendment to the Constitution. Now, amending the Indian Constitution is not an everyday matter for Parliament. And the fact that Parliament thought it fit to pass the 74th Amendment way back in 1992 was a recognition of the fact that the governance of Indian cities was below par. Effectively, it's a very complicated piece of legislation, but what it effectively says is that cities have to take charge of their own destinies and should not be run either by the center or by the state capitals. So in terms of all the various the delegations of powers and responsibilities, including taking civic elections seriously, raising all kinds of taxes, governing themselves. As the popular saying goes, you will remember the name of the mayor of London and the mayor of New York, but you will never remember the name of the mayor of your own city. So the 74th Amendment, in essence, way back in 1992, enjoined Indian cities, within inverted commas, to take charge of their own destinies. Unfortunately, it has not happened. That's point number 1 for me. Point number 2 is an area where one is working very seriously with the foundation that I am now involved with, which is attached to my name now, which is the InfraVision Foundation. We have picked up an important topic in urban governance called UMTA, Unified Metropolitan Transport Authorities. For all of you who have gone to London and picked up the Oyster card or the unified, the cards which allow you unified access to transportation, it's not just access, it is the unified decision making of looking at all transportation modes in a unified manner, whether it is suburban rail, whether it's metro, whether it's monorail, whether it is buses, auto rickshaws, taxis, parking, everything to be looked at by what is called UMTA, Unified Metropolitan Transport Authorities. India desperately requires this because every metro that you can think of is running below par because of last mile connectivity problems, and parking and road congestion is something that I don't need to talk about. So the real solution is to set up unified metropolitan transport authorities, and in the years ahead I personally plan, along with my colleagues in the InfraVision Foundation, to push this very, very strongly with all concerned stakeholders. My last point is, for urban development, is a concept called land value capture, LVC. We see that whenever there is a new project announced today, whether it's a new metro line or whether it's a national highway project or even a new industrial corridor like you said, the land around it often goes, as the rates go up as high as 5 times, 10 times. Who captures this value? It's honestly, it's political and politically connected real estate brokers. So you're making public expenditure of a particular piece of action, an airport or an industrial corridor, the land around it suddenly not just triples but become 10 times in value. But the public of India, who's making the expenditure, has no role in capturing that enhanced value coming from public expenditure. So there are many, many formats whereby, and I'm not going to bore you with those formats, there are many formats which then are able to get the appreciated land value back for reinvestment in infrastructure projects. It's called land value capture. It's a technical subject, but I thought I would raise it today as a means of financing urban infrastructure, both social, economic, and core infrastructure. These are my 3 points, and I'm going to stop here, which is, just to recap, the 74th Amendment, Unified Metropolitan Transport Authority, and use of LVC formats, land value capture formats, to be able to fund infrastructure development of cities. So with that, I'm now going to pass the baton to my colleagues, and I will start from the extreme left. I'm going to start with Dr. Shirish Sankhe, and he promised me over coffee that he has 5 important points to discuss with you. So once everybody's through, we are not going to have question and answers from the audience because 1 hour is too low for that. We will have an interaction amongst the panelists so that each of them can react on some points that would have caught their attention from the other speakers. Over to you, Shirish.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So in 2010, from McKinsey, we wrote a report called on India's urbanization, right? And so last 15, 20 years, I have been working in the urban area. Recently, with Niti Aayog, we got involved in a concept called Growth Hub, which is an economic master planning of cities. And in that, we did the Mumbai metropolitan region, Varanasi region, as well as the Vizag region. So it's a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 type of planning. So a lot of my remarks are based on the work done over the last 20 years. Okay. Before I go into some immediate points, I just wanted to say that in our report, we had made 2 important medium-term points which have not seen the light of the day. Okay, one of them, and there are 2 institutional reforms which are there everywhere else in the world, but not in India. One is what we call sort of an empowered mayor of a metropolitan region, right? That's there everywhere. New York has it, Tokyo has it, whether it's a parliamentary democracy, whether it's a presidential democracy, it's there everywhere. It's not there in India, and Vinayak already mentioned that, right? So this is a long-term point. Unfortunately, I was told that a mayor of a large metropolitan area will be more powerful than the chief minister, therefore state will fight it tooth and nail, and that's what is happening. So it's a political economy point. I hope in my lifetime it will happen. The second point, it's a medium-term point, and I'll go quickly to the shorter-term point. The second point was that the funding structure of a city needs a direct allocation of taxes, right? So 20% of GST collected in every city has to go to the city. This is done all over the world. In China, 20% of VAT goes. In New York, there is a city tax and all that type of thing. So again, the Finance Commission currently does only state and center allocation, but not to the third tier, okay? And unless that's done, the billions of dollars are required for roads, transport, and so on cannot be done. Of course, part of that will come from the land value capture, but it's a very important area. Again, as I said, that I hope that these 2 recommendations, long-term recommendations, happen in our lifetime, because that's fundamental to real urban reforms. But I'll go to the slightly shorter term points, which is what is possible in the current context and the current political economy, right? So we have been pushing 4-5 points. Point number 1 is economic master planning has to come before physical master planning, okay? And this is a very important area because, as you know, we're at a 4 trillion economy. We are putting a target of 30 trillion. That means 90% of India is not yet built. Okay, infrastructure-wise, 70% of India is not yet built, and that's going to be built, but it's built economically, right? So therefore, if we don't do the economic planning, we just take the past trends and try to do some haphazard planning. And just give two examples, right? For example, there's a very large port called Wadhavan Port that recently got announced in north of Mumbai. It's the largest port in India, it will be the largest container port in India. But rather than just the port, you can actually create a full city around it with infrastructure and so on, right? So that needs to be thought through today, not haphazardly when everything also gets built. Similarly, in Vizag, when we were looking at the metro corridors, we found that the IT hubs were not well connected with the metro corridor. Metro corridor was going like this and IT hubs were here, right? So again, that's something that could be planned. So the economic plan has to precede the physical master plan is point number one, right? Point number two is that, and again I'm taking an economic lens here because we are saying cities as drivers of economic growth, and there are many other points, okay? I'm sure that not all points will be made as Vinayak pointed out. The second one that we always say, economically, if you really want to get economic growth going, then think of attracting and retaining the underlying talent, right? So if you are trying to create, again, as I said, a data center or IT hubs and so on, think about what type of talent you want to attract and retain. And therefore, the housing, the open spaces, the entertainment and so on has to be geared towards the type of talent that you want to build. Just ask your children where they want to live in the US, despite all the Trump issues. And many of them will say large cities like New York, despite this being one of the most expensive city. Okay, so how do you get the city architecture together to get talent was point number two. And as a related point to that, and I think that many of my fellow panelists will say that, therefore, mixed use, walk to work, walk to station, open space type of 100 acres and above or 50 acres and above type of mixed use planned cities or mini cities is one of the most important way of making economic growth happen. That can be inside a cluster like Dharavi, inside city, or it can be outside just in the hinterland of city. So third point is a mixed use, well-planned mini cities is the way to go for really economic planning. Fourth point is an institutional point, and Vinayak already made, but we were trying to think through beyond municipal corporation what, because the 74th amendment is only geared towards the municipal corporation, but municipal corporation is a small area, it just develops city. But if 70% of India is not built, it's going to be built just outside the municipal limits most of the time, and that's very haphazard, right? So therefore, the whole concept of what we call regional development authority, the MMRDA equivalent or the Visakhapatnam Metropolitan Regional Development Authority needs to be substantially strengthened as well as given the mandate of economic planning. Similarly, the large municipal corporation also need to do the economic planning, tourism and so on. Recently, I sat with the Mumbai Municipal Corporation and I asked them what is their plan for investment attraction, talent attraction, economic plan, and they said it's not part of their mandate. So your point, Vinayak, yep. Okay, despite the 74th amendment, one of the largest and the richest corporations in India doesn't think that this is part of their mandate, right? So therefore, that is the institutional part. And it's not just economic, but I'm just saying that that just follows from that, right? The last 2 points are, one is on funding. I think Vinayak already made that point. I think we need to build a huge amount of infrastructure. One of them is the point I made, which is a direct devolution of taxes. Till that is not happening, I think the whole land value capture, land monetization is one of the most important ways of building something like $30 to $40 billion of infrastructure that every major city requires, and something like $5 to $10 billion of infrastructure that a tier 2 city requires, right? So therefore, using monetization and so on, I think Mumbai and area has sort of got it right. Many other states are not even familiar with this concept. So Vinayak, I think your whole concept in various forms is the right way. The last point, I know I spoke probably beyond my limit.
No, you're okay. You're still doing okay.
Yeah. The last point is a sort of a conceptual point, and this I keep on hearing. I always say that please don't fight the economics of scale and benefit of agglomeration. Don't try to create cities in the middle of nowhere, okay? Don't try to say, ki, I want distributed growth. As far as, I mean, distributed growth should be there, and I know a slightly controversial point, okay, but the distributed growth should be the hinterlands of cities and so on, rather than saying, I will create some very large cities or urban agglomeration, because all of us want large airports, well-developed healthcare system, lots of restaurants, okay, lots of other amenities that only an agglomerated city can provide. So generally a larger city will continue to become larger, so therefore planning a larger metropolitan area in the right way and creating the brownfield cities in that concept is the right way to go. And Gurgaon and Noida has shown that repeatedly, and the rest of the country can repeatedly follow, okay? So these were the 5 points. I won't summarize, okay? Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. So his decades of experience in urban planning and many of the suggestions across India, which I'm aware of he's done as a partner in McKinsey, is shining through. And while he thinks he's made 5 points, he's actually made 7.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to summarize that because I found all of them very, very interesting. The first point he made was more as a starter dish, which is to say that we've got to revamp our political economy. I mean, if the political establishment is afraid of devolving power to city mayors because they think it's going to take away political power from state chief ministers, it's a serious issue that needs immediate and timely resolution. Otherwise, our cities will not get the kind of attention they deserve. You made that point, and I think it's an important political point, which then, subserves everything else. Very quickly, I'm summarizing as bullet points: economic master planning before physical planning, social planning for talent acquisition and talent attraction, planning for mixed-use development, redefinition of city limits because of creeping peri-urbanization, direct devolution of taxes, and looking at building future cities as adjacencies to existing agglomerations and not far away, greenfield ventures on their own. So these are the broad points you made. Shirish, thank you very much. I'm now going to, other panelists, when we have time towards the end, you could, have a, shall we say, a conversation with the points each person has made other than your own. So I'm now going to ask Mr. Sumit Gera, CEO of India Business Park, of Capital Land Investment, and Capital Land Investment is a Singaporean company with, parental umbilical cords tied to Ascendus and various others. So over to you, Sumit.
Thank you, Vinayak, and very nice to hear your thoughts and Dr. Sankey's thoughts on how the government and top-down approach to changing the course of our city's future, should be looked at. I bring in a little bit of Singapore perspective. CapitaLand, as some of you may know, we are majority owned by Temasek, and one of our, before we get to profits, our mandate is, sustainability of all types, whether it's environmental sustainability or sustainability of the communities that we operate in. So we were early adopters of work, live, play sort of environment in all of our developments, including what we do in India. And obviously the clear contrast you see is when you step out of an IT park, step out of a business park, because inside is very nice, the footpaths are there, all the infrastructure is there, and you step out and we all experience what the cities are today. And I think all of us would like those cities to be very different, and that's the whole purpose of the session today. I spent some time thinking about this topic, and obviously Vinayakji and Sankey, Mr. Dr. Sankey, you're deeply entrenched into this topic for several years. For us to look at city scale development, and I spent some time thinking about, also based on my time spent in Singapore and other parts of the world, what is it that makes those cities tick? And one approach clearly is top-down that we are talking about here on the panel. But I would like to take a cue from the 74th Amendment that was just discussed earlier. And I would say, I would root for that path of cities taking charge of their own destiny. And why I say that is, India is not China. There was a cartoon I saw many years ago where, the chief in China says jump and the entire population jumps. And if Modi says jump, we all start bickering, saying, should we even do what he's saying or should we do the opposite, right? So we're not China, and that's our strength. And I'll explain why that is our strength in the context of future-proofing and improving our cities from where they are. We all probably have heard of examples of Surat and Indore, where because of the plague or because of the waste crisis, they were given a jolt, an external jolt, and they took advantage of that jolt. Like a trampoline, they went down so hard that they jumped high. And that is not because the central government wanted to do something or the state government wanted to do something. It's the people who got the jolt. It's the local municipal corporation that got the jolt. And they said, we want to do something about it. So I completely am of the opinion that the 74th Amendment could lay the path for the cities not to conflict with the central or the state government, but collaborate and do something that the state and central government cannot do, which is create pride in the people. So, you know, you go to Chandigarh, for example, people are proud to be from Chandigarh. They don't like Panchkula. Apologies for anyone who might be from Panchkula. You know, Indore is the same thing, right? You go to Switzerland, people are very proud of the rules that they follow to keep the country clean. Similarly in Singapore, they're very proud that my country is clean. And all of us, when we go to these cities, we start to naturally behave as if we are part of the city. We don't litter when you go to Singapore. We enjoy the environment in Switzerland. And by and large, people in Indore and Surat are also very proud of what they're doing. So the question then becomes, how can we create more bottom-up approach to this pride? And this can be done in 2 or 3 different ways, right? One is an external jolt like a plague or a waste crisis, which I'm not rooting for. I hope that doesn't happen to any city in the country. But it could be artificially created. You know, we have successful examples of PPPs, and those create economic incentives for companies and governments to work together to create better infrastructure, better future for all cities. But I'm talking about public pride. Today, how many of us are really proud? You know, when I say proud, it's like I'm from this city and we are known for cleanliness or hygiene or some infrastructure or our heritage. All that is lost. The identity is lost of many of our cities for sort of industrialization or IT park sort of growth. Where are all the old parks? Where are all so I was recently in Tao Devilal Park in Gurgaon. I'm sure nobody's been there, and probably for the right reason. Right? So, I'm the naive guy, moved back to India 2 years ago, and I told my family we used to go to parks every day. Let's just go to Tao Devilal Park, you know, we'll just hang around. And I took my 2 sons and my wife, and we were walking around, and we started to play with a frisbee. And something unimaginable to my kids, you know, who are still sort of new to the country. These guys who were collecting garbage, they drove in their tractors and started driving in our direction. Not to trample us, but just to collect their garbage. So, you know, we're not taking care of our parks in a way people can enjoy. As a result, we are de-linked. We are living in our society and de-linked with what's happening outside. So if I were to make one point, that would be, I would say we should probably have a rating system that all cities that aspire to be livable cities first. Economic growth can follow, but first of all, we all need to be livable cities with our own identity. There should be some objective benchmark, whether it's the Livable Cities Index or whatever, that all of us look at together and say, if the citizens of a city and the municipal corporation improve their score on this objective index by a certain margin, or the cities that are on top of this index, those cities could have, like a special economic zone, a livability economic zone, that the central government will give some incentives for cities to improve on these objective parameters. And I'm sure that a lot of cities, out of pride, will want to do this. If they see an Indore can do it, why can Gurgaon not do it? So livability, or a livable economic zone with lower taxes if you're able to improve your index. More tourism if you're able to improve your index. And more central government incentives if you can improve your livability index in the city. So I'm rooting for a bottom-up approach in line with probably what 74th Amendment has to say, and that's the one point I would make on this panel. Probably very different from what some others might feel. Thank you.
Thank you, Sumit. I think this 74th Amendment business is cutting across many of our discourses, which is good because we need to now put public pressure on making this happen in real terms. You spoke about PPPs and incentives for making cities livable, including, many of the formats that the central government uses, like viability gap funding or many other issues. So we've noted that. You've talked a lot about citizens getting public pride. And I think that's an important psychological dimension that we don't often talk about. So thank you for that. And finally, you talked about a rating system. We have some kind of a rating system. Every year I read newspaper reports, and I think it's done by the our urban ministry, that says the cleanest or the most livable cities or something like that. And best cities, they do. And I think for 3 consecutive years, the topper has been Indore. Then there has been Surat. Then there has been Bhubaneswar. And I don't remember if somebody else can prompt me. There have been 2-3 other cities.
Navi Mumbai is one of
Navi Mumbai. So there are cities that constantly top, and they seem to be topping it year after year. And I don't see many more new names coming up. Year after year it is Bhubaneswar, Indore, Surat, and 2-3 others. So I think this business of rating and then providing some incentives based on rating is a good idea. But we do have something, and that's something to start with. So thank you very much. I'm now going to I'm now going to transfer the conversation to Mr. Neil Raheja on my left. Neil is responsible for building a large portion of Bombay. So I'm sure he has very, very practical thoughts. Over to you, Neil.
Thanks, Vinayak. I think firstly, I completely agree with what everyone has said so far, and I think they're completely on point. And I'd just like to add further on those directions. What we have seen is, at least fortunately now, after the delimitation the last time, our politicians have started focusing on the urban areas. Because today you can win an election by winning the urban areas. And the urban voter is more fickle. And I think creating the momentum for people to demand more service facility is what will make an impact on achieving a better city livability. The second part is, today close to 30% of our country lives in the big cities. And if you see what happened in China, in a period of 20 years, it went from 30% to 60%. And a similar trend is going to happen in India with urbanization increasing rapidly. And urbanization will include urban adjacent, whether it's outside the technical municipal limit or not, but close to 60% in a 20-25 year period will become urban. And we need to plan in advance for that. And while I agree we need a leader who look at the cities on an overall basis, the fact is, if you see most countries, Singapore, 100% of the economy is urban. If you look at Philippines, Manila, Bangkok, UK, London, between 20 to 30% of the city's economy, of the country's economy, is that one city. In India, if you take the 5-7 cities, they would also contribute totally 20 to 30% of the economy. And if we see this economy growing to a 5 trillion economy now and 10 trillion economy in the next decade or so, I think the focus has to come in the urban areas, and that's also where the largest number of jobs are being created. Manufacturing is very critical for us, but the fact is it doesn't create the jobs with the automation going on. It's the urbanization, construction, tourism, those are the sectors which create jobs. The parts which we need to first focus on is, it has been difficult and has become even more difficult to build. And if we focus on ease of business, and I think that to me is the number one and most important part I would focus on, because if you see the hurdles one has to chase to get approvals done, it takes between 1 to 2 years in cities to get buildings planned, cities planned. Whether you have to go to environment approval, which takes 6 months to a year, various cities have stopped approvals because of environment. Some of the cities cannot go height because the civil aviation rules change every season. Then every big cities of ours has a big defense establishment. And if you see the number of litigations the defense authorities have had between saying it should be 10 kilometers to 10-meter radius, and no judicial member will want to touch this because the defense is sacred. But the fact is, you cannot have hardcore defense establishments, and most of these cities don't have hardcore defense establishments right in the heart of the city if you want people to live there and not allow development around. One of those has to change. And those are the areas you have to deal with. The fourth area within ease of business is close to 40% of India's litigation is land related. Whether it is title disputes, whether it's the neighboring boundary. And today we have enough geotagging to map boundaries of the properties. Most countries, you get a piece of paper saying you own this piece of land. In India, we don't have anything like that. We have a history on title, and I can get up 50 years later and claim your land. And that's the legal fact. If we can address some of these and change the title and the boundary issues, you can save half the litigation. And the fact is today, every year we are adding to litigation in the country. The pendencies is increasing. And the last of all is the building approval, which the corporations do. So I think if we just focus on ease of business on an over-encompassing basis, I think you can help in increasing the speed of urbanization and plan for all these things and look at it uniformly. Because the fact is we aren't creating the right real estate, and therefore close to 30% of our big cities are urban slums. And I don't think it's fair from a livability perspective to have a third of our population living in unhygienic slum conditions. And I think if we want housing for all like our Prime Minister wants, I think that's a critical area to focus on. The second big bucket I'd focus, like Mr. Gera spoke about, is I would look at it as a livability overall. Where, whether it is a central thought process on the entire livability. It's, Dr. Sankhe spoke about economic planning and then urban planning. But I would agree on that, and therefore I think the important thing to look at is to see how can you look at an entire livability, whether it is the green space, whether it's social infrastructure, whether it's urban transport, walk to work. Most cities which are successful, people can walk. Our cities are not planned for walking. Whether it's the last mile connectivity from metro to workplaces, schools, hospitals, the entire livability has to be looked at. Green cover. If we can look at the livability and then plot in where the residential and buildings need to come, planning the building and all is the easiest. You have to look at the larger ecosystem. Half of our cities, the garbage is thrown outside. There is no garbage recycling. And therefore, one has to see the larger livability. If we can achieve and look at that holistically, I think you'll have much better cities to live in. Populations will move in faster. And I think the economic development will be much faster than that. Now I'll stop.
Thank you. Thank you, Neil. I'm going to quickly summarize my take on what you said. 5 points. I think one of the critical points you made is that level of urbanization. It is popularly believed that India has 30% level of urbanization. It is increasingly proving to be a myth. And Shirish, you will know with your work, officially 30%. With your work with NITI on urbanization, I read a piece in the ETA about a week back which said NITI Aayog is working on a paper, and I think you're helping them with that, on redefining what is a city limit across 5 cities, Mumbai, Vizag, something, I've forgotten the names. So it's an interesting movement, and that article said that if we were really to redraw our city boundaries today, including peri-urban areas which are almost indistinguishable from the main city limits, then India today is 63% urban. Now that's a completely different mindset for policy planners, that we are not talking about India where 30% urban and 70% of the population live in the villages and all that. 63% is already urban. And this is the point that Neil is making, that look, if this is the level of, you talked about going to 60%, God help us, we may already be at 63. And this is with completely unplanned planning, as you said. So if we are to actually undo many of the sins of the past and build for the future, then recognizing this urbanization as the economic growth engine and therefore planning for it is important. And for those of you who are attending this seminar, obviously because you have an interest in urban development, keep your eyes on what the NITI does in terms of this redefinition and whether India is 30% or India is 63% today. Next point, land. I think this has bedeviled Indian conversations for both urban, rural, acquisition, notification, land laws, political fights. We've done a lot on digitization of land, state by state, but it's still a problem that exists today because of the sheer backlog and the number of records that have to be brought up to digitalized and perfect levels. So that's a point well made. Building approvals, we discussed this 30, 40 years ago at CII seminars also. So somewhere this business of building approvals taking time is purely one of the worst cases of negative ease of doing business. I don't want to say more, we all know about it. And that was your point on speed of urbanization and relaxing ODBs to actually address it. And the final point you made is similar to what Sumit said, that look, can we have some kind of a livability index among all the dimensions that you people discussed, walk, last mile connectivity, green spaces, parks, schools, colleges, social infrastructure. So can we have a livability index that is used by city planners in a manner of full disclosure when they give planning permissions for either standalone buildings or for semi-townships or clusters? So so for one of the outcomes of this seminar today is to say that we are pushing, among other things, for a publicly announced livability index on the basis of which plans need to be approved, and public has to be informed about that. So thank you very much. Important points made. I will now go over to Mr. Rajat Saini, CEO and MD of National Industrial Corridor. Amongst all of us now, he represents the government point of view, and it is important that he focuses on cities, not just as places where people live and go to work, but also as the MD of the Industrial Development Corridor, National Industrial Corridor. He's also talking about building a generation of industrial cities and industrial corridors. That's a very, very interesting initiative you're leading for the country, sir. My best wishes, and we'd love to hear from you what your thoughts are on the subject.
Thank you, Mr. Chatterjee, and thank you to all the panelists also for giving many important points which I would like to address So, two problems are clear in our discussion. That one is how to do planned urbanization as well as how to have industrialization, and by industrialization I mean how to have jobs in cities. So Dr. Shirish said cities as growth hubs. So cities as of now are kind of GDP hub or tax hub, and from there we need to move on to cities as jobs hub also. So in the same report which he was mentioning, I read it somewhere that around 2/3 of India's GDP comes from cities, but only 1/3 of employment comes from Indian cities. Even if we go beyond this administrative city versus to the urban agglomeration area. So how do we address this gap? One way is obviously the various reforms that were discussed by my co-panelists, that we need to improve governance, we need to improve infrastructure, we need to improve livability. Another way to address this is also building greenfield industrial cities. I know Dr. Shirish said that we should not build greenfield industrial cities, but maybe not very far from the existing cities, somewhere nearby, so that the social infrastructure bit can be taken care of. And this is this particular piece which National Industrial Corridor Development Corporation is taking care of. Many of you might have heard about Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor. I believe not many of you have heard about NICDC or National Industrial Corridor Development Corporation. It is just a bigger version of Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor Development Corporation. Earlier, there used to be only one industrial corridor. Now there are 11 such industrial corridors. That's why the name was also changed from DMIC to NICDC. Now, what we do in this, when we identify a corridor, let's say Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor, a lot of planning goes into it, that what are the factors by which, what are the missing links, what are the issues. After addressing those issues, we can reach a particular number. Now in planning, you need to have some base and some aspiration. Okay, this is the base, we want to reach this particular target, and for reaching this target, these are the interventions that we have identified. Those interventions may be in terms of infrastructure, those interventions may be in terms of improving our processes, and also those interventions may be in terms of having better legislation, having better rules, or rather less regulation. So we do a lot of planning, and we also identify a lot of industrial areas or industrial hubs. And all those have to be planned as greenfield industrial hubs. A lot of you must have heard about Dholera, which is also the India's first semiconductor city, and where the first India's first semiconductor fab plant is coming. It is being built by Tatas. So that is one of the initial projects of National Industrial Corridor Development Corporation. Similarly, a bit of Greater Noida is what we have planned and developed. In Maharashtra, there is a place called Shendra Bitkin near Aurangabad, now Chhatrapati Sambhaji Nagar. Very recently, in fact last year only, government had announced 12 new industrial smart cities under this particular corporation. So we are trying to deal with this problem of industrialization and urbanization. Obviously, very little bit of urbanization and more towards industrialization, but keeping in the concepts of walk to work, the livability of cities, and obviously we are not riddled with the problem of the legacy issues of existing cities. So when you start afresh, when you start from a clean slate, when you develop a greenfield industrial city, you don't have the problem of existing cities. But you also don't have the problem of money. You can plan well, you know where to put your roads, where to put utilities, etc., etc. The problem comes with the population. How to get people over there, so you have made these greenfield cities livable, but you have to generate enough jobs, and not just jobs, you have to generate enough traction, you have to generate social infrastructure, and eventually enough interest for people to come and live over there. So that is a problem which initially my corporation did not think when we started developing somewhere around 2014-15, when we started constructing these cities, we did not envisage that problem. But over last 3-4 years, a lot of our interventions have gone into solving these issues. After building the physical infrastructure, after even allotting the lands to industries, there is this problem of getting people to come and work, and more importantly, live over there. You can get the people to work, but getting people to live over there, having schools, colleges, hospitals, other recreational opportunities need to be there. So this is what we have been trying to do. We have been trying to basically build industrial smart cities. Maybe there are many intersections between the existing cities and our cities. There are lessons to be learned. The problems that we have faced in the existing cities, the lack of master planning, the lack of this administrative boundaries of cities versus the overall urban agglomeration. So if I just take the example of Dholera, the area that we are doing master planning is 500 square kilometers at one go. A barren area, 500 square kilometer master planning. We started small, we started with 25 square kilometer, which is fully constructed. Land has been allotted, slowly people are coming. But the thing that has joined us obviously we are depending upon places like Ahmedabad, places like Bhavnagar for people to come and live over there in Dholera. But the importance of social infrastructure, the importance of skilling, and obviously the old cities can learn the importance of planning, that unless we plan well, we will not be able to do value capture, which Mr. Chatterjee also mentioned. There are places in India where a huge 60-meter ROW road comes up, and on both sides you just see tea shops, pan shops, small grocery shops coming up. There are no interlinked, there are no secondary and tertiary roads that are being built. Only the arterial road is being built. So what happens, apart from just 100 meter on both sides of this great highway, there is some economic opportunity which is all blocked by low and medium businesses, and then there is not enough, there are no enough linkages to open up the hinterland. So that is one problem that comes up with master planning, and we see in lot of areas. If I talk about industry, our industrial parks and industrial areas have, largely the work has been done by the states. For big industry, we have been able to solve the problem, but for medium and small scale industries, we have not been able to solve the problem of land. So if a person wants to establish a small scale or a MSME industry in India, land allotment is still quite a big issue. Apart from other EODB issues, for EODB issues, maybe all sizes of industry face problem, but land problem for a small scale industry, where will you get industrial grade land, industrial grade power, industrial grade water, and then the change of land use. So industrial cities try to resolve that problem, industrial areas try to resolve that problem, but obviously a lot more needs to be done. So between the existing cities and the new greenfield industrial smart cities, a lot of learnings that are there from both experiences, which we are exchanging, which we need to exchange. And we are trying to solve the same problem, but in multiple ways. And through these greenfield industrial cities under NICDC, we are trying to see that the problem of, so when these cities actually become the economic growth engine, they should also become the growth, the engine for jobs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Saini. You have a lot of responsibility lying on your shoulders for, twinning the two objectives of employment and industrialization. It's a national objective, and I think we are proud and happy to have you lead this charge. You spoke about Dholera, and I think it is going to be a significant showcase of what a greenfield city conceptualized on barren land can achieve. As you mentioned, Tatas have already taken the decision to set up their semiconductor plant at Dholera.
It's constructed quite a lot, maybe.
So but the decision
10,
is there.
15 feet above ground.
So now that's a 90,000 crore investment, the Tata Semiconductor business, of which Government of India has given a 50% viability gap funding.
And state government another
20%. So 70% VGF has gone to a 90,000 crore project at Dholera. Now look at the number of high-tech people who are going to be working in that area, and he is also sensitized to the fact that they now require relevant social infrastructure. You can't depend on Ahmedabad and Bhavnagar for them to come every day.
So one of the things that we are trying to build is a golf course.
Yeah, that, yes.
And a
Yeah.
food court.
Yes.
So these kind of things.
Yeah.
Initially we thought just building the utilities would
No,
be
no, no, no.
sufficient, but that we didn't find it to be
So
sufficient.
the fact is, hopefully the Dholera learning and increasing, you didn't mention that Dholera has just been approved for an airport also.
So we are building that airport,
So-
as well as expressway.
Correct. So all these linkages are now being demonstrated with the development of Dholera. So for your balance 11 corridors and 12 smart cities, I think we don't have to rediscover the wheel and fire again. I mean, you can just go ahead with saying these are the Dholera learnings.
Yeah.
Airport, golf course, leisure, entertainment, housing, all of that. And the Tatas, I'm sure, will also come in with a whole lot of social infra to take care of the very, very different kind of workforce that they will have in a semiconductor complex. It's not really a factory in the traditional sense. But so there's a lot of learning from Dholera, sir. So at a future CII meeting, I think two things I'd look forward would be the experience of Amravati and the experience of Dholera as two of the new developments that have a lot of lessons for us as a country for greenfield development. Now before, I'm just going to, we have time, so we've done well on time. We have about 10 minutes, and I'm going to request the panelists to think about certain questions or clarifications that they may have amongst us fellow panelists. And assuming you will take 2-3 minutes to collect your thoughts, I'm going to ask an old friend, Mr. Satish from L&T, who's sitting in the front row. Satish has been at the front end of developing urban infrastructure in this country, buildings, factories, many, many large establishments. So he's a storehouse of knowledge. So Satish, a special invitation to you, since I saw you sitting quietly in the audience, to share your thoughts with us. Then I'll come back to the panelists.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
many
I think most of the project, even including the Dholera, actually has been.
People will not get to see you.
Okay, fine, yeah.
Come to the rostrum.
Where?
Come to the rostrum.
Yeah. Hello, I think, good afternoon. Thank you, Vinayak, for this opportunity. Dholera also is being constructed by Larsen & Toubro. I think we do most of the projects, and we do construction of, the mind-boggling figure actually. It's about 1 crore 70,000. 1,70,000 crores is our turnover, and almost about 1 lakh crores comes in infrastructure. But this is a very small thing, and What is being built now is only Bombay, Delhi, Bangalore, Chennai and all. What about the balance? Like he said, only not even 30%. So much needs to be done. So what I will talk about is, we don't get workers. Actually, the big problems we have is that we don't have workers. So my request to everybody here, that we need to do things which are modular, which are precast. We can do it very fast. I can do a precast building instead of a cast in situ buildings in 12 months, in 18 months we can do that. So I think same way we can make roads with precast. Everything can be done. That's actually Singapore. All construction is in precast only. Nobody goes and does anything in this. If you go to China, all buildings are either steel with precast. In India, we again do old method, bamboo laga ke karte hain. Of course, we do a little bit mechanized and all that. So there are a lot of things that we can do. Actually, I am doing projects actually for Raheja. It's a steel building, and we did it very fast. We did it in 18 months in Mumbai. So because only a private developer thinks कि मेरे को जितना जल्दी मिलेगा मुझे फायदा है. I think that's what you have to think, because it's not only that we need it faster, we don't have the workers to do. Nobody comes to workers. Today also we have a shortage of around 50,000 workers. अभी हम जाके CSR कर रहे हैं. We're doing CSR in Jharkhand. We're doing it actually in the UP, all the places, and we want to open CSTI in those places. Okay, so that is one thing I said. Second is, a lot of redevelopment is happening everywhere, and redevelopment is only buildings, but I think we also have to do the redevelopment of the infrastructure. So otherwise, you go to another place, the sewage will overflow, everything will overflow, there will be no water supply. So you need to do that also. I think that is something that the town planners and all need to do. Basically in India, पहले हम लोग घर बनाते हैं, बाद में रोड लगाते हैं. I think if you go and see any other country, पहले road बनता है, वो जो whatever infrastructure is required, water, sanitary, electricity, everything is done, then the houses. But in India, it is always the reverse. So I think this is something that with town planning and all need to be reversed. Second one I want to talk about is the airport. Especially I am from Bangalore. So the biggest problem in Bangalore is airport. Everybody actually gauges Bangalore by the distance that you have to go. Actually from Delhi to Bangalore is actually 2 hours 20 minutes flight or so. But to reach my home, which is about 45 kilometers, take another 2.5 hours. And that is during non-peak hours. So this is something that everybody must plan, that you must have a second airport. Oh, zamana gaya ki ek city mein ek airport nahi hai. You go to any other country, London has got so many airports, you go to Moscow, so many airports. I think this is something that we have to think about. Yes. Then, Bangalore is not the cleanliest place. Actually, jo saabne bala us list mein nahi hai. Of course, it is also not that clean the way it was. But in Bangalore, there is a place called Electronic City, where all the IT places are there. It is one of the cleanest places in Bangalore. There is no garbage, roads are maintained, everything. How? It is because somebody, there is an authority there, and they are doing the thing. See, like what you are saying about mayors and all, there is a lot of issue going on. So somebody actually, there is a thing called Janagraha in Bangalore, they are all fighting. In India, the assembly elections, the parliament elections are held on the same day it is due. Whereas in any, whether you take Mumbai, you take Bangalore, none of the corporate elections are held. Corporation elections are never held. Because the politicians are safe, they don't want to actually share anything with others. It's as simple as it is. People are actually fighting for that. You have mayors. When there is somebody, a mayor, he has the fight for that city and all. I think that's very, very important. The next one, I think, it's very good, the mass transport. I think people should use mass transport and we should build it also. Even now, metro where it's coming where actually, okay, thank God it's also coming in some tier 2 cities and all. But metro has to come everywhere. Where metro is not there, you'll have to see how to actually do the thing. So I think this is some of the points I had. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Satish. Thank you for your, and apologies for my last minute invitation, but you handled it pretty well. Thank you very much. Okay, now we have about, I'm going to take an extra 6-7 minutes to end at 1:35 instead of 1:30, if that's all right. So I'm now going to ask the panelists for their comments or questions or any closing thoughts that they may have at the rate of 1 minute each. I have nothing further to say other than thank you. So maybe 1 minute each across the panelists for any closing comments or questions. Let's just go down this way. We start with you, Shri.
No, I don't have any more comments. As I said, already made 7 points, as you pointed out, right? But I have a question for Mr. Saini, is that it's the industrial cities, I think, is a great concept, but that needs to be transferred from just these, what is under the national agenda to all the MIDCs and the APIICs and so on. And as a part of our plan, we are actively pushing from industrial estate to industrial cities. So when it comes to you, please respond to that. And one point for you is that we have been talking about ease of doing business for so many years. Has anything really improved, from where you stand, and what has improved and how long a way to go is the second question for you. So I'll hand over.
Thanks, Shirish. Neil, your turn.
So, to answer your question, the building approval per se has eased a little bit, the whole process. But the challenge is to get a building approval, you need environment approval, MOEF, defense approval, civil aviation approval, and those are all central government. I think the challenge we have is each of these departments don't talk to each other. And as a closing comment, both of you spoke about getting our cities to be governed as one. If we can get that political motivation started where either they're empowered, or if not single person, a mayor being empowered, but a committee which runs it holistically will help us achieve this towards it, because otherwise we have a lot of challenges addressing various of these.
Thank you, Neil. Rajat.
So just to answer that question, I'll just take 30 seconds to tell. There are more than 4,000 industrial parks in India. And out of those 4,000 or 4,200 odd, around 3,700, so more than 85% parks lie along these industrial corridors, whether it is Delhi, Mumbai, Amritsar, Kolkata, Chennai, Bengaluru, Vizag, Chennai, Bengaluru, Mumbai, and all those. Now, the way it is being planned is all these parks should act like spoke, and the big industrial area should act like hubs where, and these industrial areas, how are they going to come up? They are going to come up in a joint effort by state governments and central government, as well as being professionally managed. So, like you mentioned, MIDC or Dholera. So this Shendra Bitkin in Maharashtra is being managed by a joint venture company between NICDC and MIDC. So only the MD is a government guy, or MD also can be recruited from the private sector, and all other, and these cities are being professionally managed. Similarly, Dholera is being managed by a company called DICDL, which is again a joint venture between NICDC and government of Gujarat, where again all the workforce is from state. So that is how we are trying to change the landscape little bit, but obviously we need to have a lot of patience. It takes 10, 20 years to do these things. So someone plants the idea, someone else constructs it, and then someone else actually sees the fruits of it. So that is how it has been happening, and maybe with more such Government of India funding, we will see much bigger and bigger industrial area and industrial cities in the next decade to come.
Thank you very much. Sumit, you have the last word.
Yes, thank you. So my question is to you, Mr. Vinayak, and also to Dr. Shirish. And taking a cue from what Mr. Saini said, you're building in industrial towns and now building social infrastructure. Now, the context globally has changed to more artificial intelligence, more high-tech manufacturing. Number of jobs, shape and nature of jobs is changing very fast. OpenAI as a company has 100 employees, right? When you set up a semiconductor manufacturing facility, number of employees is much lesser than it used to be even before in the same industry. So how's that, Mr. Vinayak and Dr. Shirish, playing into urban planning? How's that playing into, what will happen, what is likely to happen to cities? So we're not surprised after 10 years of planning and saying, oh, we did not take into consideration. I'm sure it's being taken into consideration, but the question is, to what extent?
So I think both of us will refrain from giving you a comprehensive answer, because the question you have posed is very important, but very broad, that the changing nature of a worker or a job requires a changing definition of the livability conditions. And how will that be now taken into consideration by these rather archaic boards, which are often called town and country planning boards, etc., etc. So it's a well-asked question, but I will request CII Secretariat to flag this for the next, if not as far away for the next AGM, but somewhere in between also. So with that, sorry sir, we're going to close the session. Thank the panelists. I hope you enjoyed yourselves as much as I enjoyed interacting with all of you. I hope the members in the audience found it interesting, and it is certainly an interesting topic. And with these closing comments, thank you everybody, and I declare the session closed. Thank you.
Thank you. On behalf of CII, I would like to thank the entire panel. May I request the panel to come forward for a group photo, please. I'll also request Mr. Chatterjee to please hand over a token of appreciation to the panel members. Can I request Mr. Neil Raheja to please hand over the token of appreciation to Mr. Vinayak Chatterjee. Thank you, everyone. Please join.